Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in this magical, magnanimous, magnificent, majestic, marvelous, metaphysical, miraculous, mind-awakening, mind-boggling, and mind-blowing planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio, where we like to say, you are the inspired and the inspiration, so let's be inspired, let's inspire others, and let's inspire before we expire. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here with you yet again for another soul adventure, an inspiring episode to explore, discuss, and discover the many diamonds within each and every one of us and the many gems in our world that have yet to be revealed. So get comfortable, grab your favorite drink, kick back, sit back, or lie back. Take in a nice, deep, healing, peaceful, and cleansing breath. And let us prospect and learn together as we discuss today's show topic, and that's going to be, what does your soul want to know? And our special guest coming on here in just a few minutes is going to lead us in some channeling and transformation and wisdom, and really excited to have her on for the first time here on Inspired Living. So as we journey on the many pathways of life to dream, discover, explore, and experience through what I like to say, the mind, the body, and the spirit, for another inspiring, uplifting, and educational episode. Do want to give a big shout out and thank you, of course, to all of our inspired listeners from around the globe, the universe, and yes, beyond. My team and I here at Inspired Living Radio are always so humbled and grateful for you listening, downloading, and subscribing, leaving reviews, and voting now to make Inspired Living Radio and Podcast a best inspirational show and a best spiritual show according to FeedSpot. So we really appreciate it, and we really appreciate you, and thank you for the listening and referencing and downloading. If you have yet to subscribe on social media, you can follow us at a few different places. You can also listen to us live right now through our global players from anywhere around the planet. You don't need a password or membership. You can go to either OMTime's Internet Global Player, and those links are on our social media page. You can also get the global player at marclainhart.com. The best way to follow us, our main page is on Facebook. Just look for the community Inspired Living Radio and Podcasts. Instagram, Inspired For Us. That's the number 4, Inspired For Us. Twitter, now known as X, Inspired For Us. TikTok at The Intuitive Prospector. And of course, you can learn more about my journey at marclainhart.com, or internet search The Intuitive Prospector. You can also follow us over on our YouTube channel, which is growing by leaps and bounds. I'm happy to report that the channel is approaching 21,000 subscribers, prospectors, which I'm always so honored and humbled for following me on this amazing journey that we're all going through. You can also follow us on through Audible, and just ask Alexa to open up Inspired Living Podcast, and that will play this latest episode. So as I like to say, a new day, a new opportunity, a day we have not seen before to use our intuition to prospect this wonderful world around us. Are you ready to go prospecting? I know I am, and I'm looking forward to today's guest. So a little bit more about Stephanie Banks. She is a highly sought after intuitive channel, mentor, and guide who helps people connect on the soul level. She channels from the perspective of any soul currently on the planet, souls on the other side, purely non-physical beings such as spirit guides, as well as trees, animals, and Gaia. Connection and communication are the common themes in Stephanie's professional endeavors as a speech-language pathologist, a birth doula, a lactation consultant, an infant massage instructor, and an intuitive channel. When her mother's dementia made verbal communication impossible, Stephanie found ways to communicate with her mother's soul. This was the beginning of her channeling journey. As a conscious channel, Stephanie is both the vessel to receive the messages as well as guide to provide depth and context for the information coming through. She uses her keen sense of humor, love, and compassion to join her clients in their spiritual experiences. Stephanie also mentors clients in discerning their own inner voice of wisdom, enhancing their confidence and self-trust, improving their relationships, and clarifying the soul's purpose and finding their laughter and joy. Author of the best-selling Joining Joni, Staying Connected to Your Loved One Through Dementia and Beyond, Stephanie is completing her second book about her spiritual journey. In her TEDx talk, I Am an Intuitive Channel, she shares her unexpected experience with channeling and invites others to discover their own intuitive gifts. If you want to learn more about today's guest, Stephanie Banks, you can get the links off our social media pages that's been blasted out over on the Om Times main Inspired Living page, and you can go to soulinsight.com and you'll see a nice, beautiful picture of Stephanie about channeling wisdom for personal and global transformation. And what would your soul want to know for today's episode? So, Stephanie, welcome to Inspired Living. How are you, my friend?
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm really happy to be here with you and see where we meander.
Yes, and so I want to start because the message I got this week is we are the sum of our experiences, right? We sum up what our experiences are, and for you to be a channel, I'm sure you like myself, you didn't set out to be a channeling guide or mentor. I know that I did not years ago, but our experiences lead us down these paths, and I want to talk about your mom. That was probably so difficult with when we talk about dementia, when we talk about the mind and the mental cognitive breakdown of not even able to have verbal communication. You found a different way to communicate with your mother's soul. And tell us a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit about how this experience really sums up who you are today and what you are doing today.
Yeah. I really do credit my mother's dementia with so many unexpected gifts. So it's difficult, as you said. It's heartbreaking and gut-wrenching and just a constant daily experience of loss when you love someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia or any progressive neurological or cognitive decline. And I was trained for this. So my background is as a speech pathologist. I have worked in hospitals and medical settings for decades, helping people who have dementia. And yet, when it was time for me to figure out how to stay connected to my mother when she had hers, and hers was a type that affects younger people. She started to develop her symptoms in her 50s, and she had it for over 15 years by the time she passed.
Wow.
So this was a long, ongoing, drawn-out process, and I was not doing as well as I expected myself to do in terms of being able to understand her or communicate well with her or have her understand me. So at the time, I had a dear friend. I said had because she's on the other side now. But when she was in body, she used to channel. She was a very, very gifted intuitive channel. And as I listened to her channel other living beings, I asked her if she would please meet with me privately and channel my mother, because I really was not we were struggling, just as anybody does. And most of our interactions were frustrating. So my friend channeled my mom's soul, and I got to ask all the questions that were on my heart. What is my role with you right now? How do I support you in this journey? What type of protection do you need from me? How do I keep us afloat while you traverse this unknown space in her decline? And her soul was able to tell me very clearly, this is what I need you to do. This is what I need you to stop doing. This is how our souls are meant to be in service to one another. And it changed everything. It changed my relationship with my mother. It actually changed my relationship with myself, because once I understood how far-reaching this type of soul connection could be and how many different applications it could have across all relationships in my life, how could it not change everything? So I decided I needed to learn how to do this for myself, and I did. And then I figured out, well, if I can do this for myself, I really want to teach other people how to do it as well. And so I do that too.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And there's just so many diamonds in that. First talking about dementia, as you know, science and medicine. I've been in medicine for over 25 years, and we're seeing the rise of dementia, even starting in people as young as 30 now. And I think a lot of it's based on, I think of it like a computer screen. When you have just too many browser windows open, the brain can't process, and we have so much coming at us in our society, from social media to news cycles to your cell phone, your smartphone. Everything is just coming at us, and the brain, in a sense, it's a form of evolution. Unfortunately, it's not a positive form of evolution because dementia is so sad. But science is showing us through medicine that people are actually getting onset dementia in their 30s. And I believe in the future that there's some cutting edge technology through medicine that they will find a cure for the cognitive decline of the brain, is really what it is, right? And so I love that you were able to not be a victim of your circumstances, but rise above. This wasn't happening to you, this was happening for you, to find a new way to communicate with your mother. And channeling is not anything new, right, Stephanie? Channeling has been around for centuries. This goes all the way back to indigenous times, of channeling the spirit, the soul, your spirit guides, the ascended masters, the inspirers, if you will. And I just love that you took the flexibility of your circumstance, which I'm sure is it just feels heartbreaking to me. I've worked with people that have, seen their loved ones go into dementia and then pass over, and as a medium have actually done readings to, say the information that needs to be said. But for our listeners, kind of take us through channeling from a layman's term, because I always remind people, how do you talk to somebody that doesn't no longer have a voice box, doesn't have a, we're speaking right now because this is a vibration off my vocal cord, right? So how would you explain to people, how do you communicate channeling when there's no voice or vibration off a vocal cord in the physical world? Tell us a little bit on the spiritual side and the channeling and what you've experienced as a channeler.
Wow. Well, I hope I can explain it. The truth is that it's still a mystery to me and will probably always remain so. But the best way I can speak from my own experience of it is, as vibrational beings, we do not have to have vocal cords in order to communicate. We don't even have to have faces for facial expression. There's lots of different ways for communication. So vibrationally speaking, we are always emanating some sort of energy. And for those of us that feel very highly sensitive, we can do a lot of communicating with absolutely no words and without even seeing another person, if we attune ourselves to that subtlety. And with the channeling that I do, I channel the souls that are here on the planet in body, as well as those that are on the other side, as well as those that have never incarnated ever. And so it doesn't really matter that one has had or not had any physical lifetimes. We have, all of us, the ability to connect on an energetic level with any being, really, that we wish to. And it does require devotion to a practice, many practices, spiritual practices, meditative practices, attunement practices, whatever brings you into that highest vibrational loving frequency. That's what I understand to be a match, at least to the dimension that I'm channeling from, which is fifth dimensional consciousness, unity consciousness. So all of that, jargon aside, we can connect with one another much better and much more profoundly than what we have been doing all along, what we have seen from the time that we're infants being instructed in, this is a ball, this is a dog, labeling things and using language and sounds. And we can do that by getting really still, really quiet, really attuned, really open-hearted, and allowing for what needs to be felt and seen and understood to come through. And that's kind of how I started in the learning how to channel my mom, as I sat alongside someone who was bringing through the words and the language. It wasn't coming through me, but it resonated so deeply. And that was like the foundational level is, okay, this feels true to me. These words that are coming through, the sense, the meaning, the intention behind these words, it was giving me the chills. That's my signal for what's true and deep connection. And it allowed me to start somewhere with the communication with her that really did transcend whatever I could garner from her outer expressions, which were starting to become less and less obvious, and she was going more and more inward. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but that's about it.
No, that's a really great explanation, and a couple key points that you pointed out was energy, right? Everything is energy moving. The laws of physics dictate that energy always has to travel somewhere, right? We know the energy in your heart that makes your heart beat from a medical standpoint. When that energy leaves the heart, we decarnate. You use the word incarnate, which means coming into physical form and vibration. And when we decarnate, we leave the physical form, but our energy, our mannerisms, our love, our memories move to that next source. Now, of course, the million-dollar question is, where is that next source? And I always remind my students and my listeners, when people ask me, where is heaven? I say heaven isn't a location. Heaven is a vibration, whatever your belief system is, whether that's the afterlife, the summerland, heaven, or maybe you have no belief in the afterlife, and that's okay. But when you think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, as Nikola Tesla talked about back in the, we're talking back 1800s, late 1800s, you'll start to unlock the secrets of the universe. And one key point that I really was really standing out to me when you use the word devotion, because when I'm teaching people, whether it's my students or doing a lecture or workshop, I always tell them you have to start with trust and patience, and you have to move into that place of silence and stillness. And you have to have that devotion, that discipline, and that dedication, because the brain is constantly going. The ego is constantly in the physical body. And when you get into that place of silence and stillness, and Rumi talked about this, Lao Tzu talked about this, Confucius talked about this, a lot of the gurus from the past always talked about the more silent and still you become, the more you will actually hear. And so for the listeners out there, I can't make anybody hear a message of what Stephanie and I are talking about today, but this is an opportunity for you to go practice sitting in that stillness, sitting in that power, sitting in that silence, and see where your brain takes you, see where your thoughts take you, because thoughts are portals. And if you think in terms of the energy, you can go through some pretty amazing portals and connect with your loved ones, your friends, your family, your fur babies. But you have to find that place of stillness, whether that's meditation, being out in nature, doing something you love, and clearing that mindset, because awareness is the greatest agent for change if you want to start getting into channeling and connecting with whatever it is you're searching for, that diamond within, and the many diamonds that I talk about in our world. So for our listeners, in the second part of the show, and Steffi, if you're okay with this, we'll provide the phone number. You can go to our social media pages as well and get the phone number to call into Om Times Radio, the call-in lines. My producer, Chris, will put you in a waiting room, and you can give this a go if you want to experience what channeling is. And that number to call is 1-202-570-7057. I'll give that right before we go to our break as well, here in a few minutes. And this is an opportunity. We haven't opened up the phone lines here on Inspired Living for a while. So if you are listening live right now and you want to call in and get the experience of channeling, I always remind people it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, but you usually get something. And Stephanie, you said the chills. For our listeners out there, those are tying into your clairs, your clairsentience, your clairvoyance. The clairvoyance is what you get in your mind, and the clairsentience is what Stephanie is describing as feeling those chills. So your body is technically an antenna to what is unseen. And I always remind people we have three eyes in life: the two eyes that physically look into the physical world, and the third eye, or the brow chakra, that sees beyond our physical limitations. So with you, Stephanie, how was it when you got to tell me about talking with your mom after she made her transition? Her energy moved and she decarnated to the spiritual side, and she was able to come back and talk with you. How did that make you feel? Because that in a sense is not just channeling, that's also mediumship, which are ancient forms of communication. How did that make you feel when she came back and said, "Hey, Stephanie, I'm still very much alive and very much in a great way. How are you doing?"
Well, I feel like that was a point of great improvement in our relationship, actually. Things get a lot more cleaner and freer and more expansive when you're no longer trying to drag along the earthly responsibilities and roles that we have. So my mom and I are great now. She's been on the other side for 11 years, and I see her all over the place in nature. She is a big fan of sending male cardinals to my
Oh,
window.
yeah.
They
Okay.
are almost of a harassing nature. They just do not go away. And so it's really beautiful. But what really transformed the relationship that I have with her is being able to, even in the moment as we're sitting having a meal together in the three-dimensional world, knowing that we might be struggling right now, but what's true is that we're bigger than this moment. There's more to us than this moment. And we eventually got to the place where we could laugh about all of the nonsense that we were wading through.
I love it.
And there was a lot of nonsense. So we would just laugh, and we wouldn't be laughing about anything in particular, just sharing that beautiful energy that laughter brings, because that is a very elevating energy.
Well, I love that you make a good point there, because some relationships are actually healed when they make the transition over, right? Because you're right, they leave all the earthly mindsets and ego and opinions and judgments when they move over. They're still that same person, right? They still have their same mannerisms and their love and their memories. But I've witnessed myself relationships that have been healed after they've passed over, including COVID. In COVID, I had a series of readings and bookings that I had done where people didn't get to say goodbye, and that person made their transition because they couldn't be in the same space, and they came back through to say, now I can say my goodbyes. But there really is no goodbyes if you think about it, that bigger picture you're talking about, right? It's just until we see each other again, or I see you down the road. And I love that she comes to you with the male cardinal, because I always remind the listeners, look for the signs, look for the symbols, look for the synergy. And the synergy is your energy and the energy that's all around you. When it blends, you can have some pretty cool experiences. And of course, the synchronicities in life, which Einstein always said, synchronicities and coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous, whatever your viewpoint is on God. But when you see the signs, the symbols, the synergy, and the synchronicities, nature is probably the number one way that it's delivered to let you know that your loved ones are only ever a thought away. So I love that you get the cardinal that's being very like, hey, pay attention to me. Not that your mom is a cardinal, but it's enough to trigger your mindset to go, oh, hi, Mom. That's how the communication works. So for the listeners out there, if you want to give it a go, I always say ask, believe, take that deep breath that we did at the beginning of the show, because breath is very important to the journey. And then you're going to receive, and you're going to perceive based on your own experiences, because again, you're the sum of your experiences. So before we go to the break, I'm sure some of the listeners out there are saying, can we learn to channel and connect to our loved ones on the other side? Can we do this, or do I have to go to a certain person that's had this trauma of dementia or loss? Is there a way that I can channel or learn to channel?
Yes, 100%. I believe that with every fiber of my being. If I can learn to do this, then anyone can learn to do this, because there's really nothing unique or special about me that would place me in a separate category to say, oh, she's born with something that no one else or very few others have. I actually don't believe that that's the case. So I learned to do this through certain practices, trial and error. And honestly, I do believe that most of channeling is self-trust. Trusting what's coming through, trusting that, you actually are hearing or sensing something, because what we tend to do is immediately discount it and say that's not real, I'm just making it up, it's just wishful thinking. But that's actually conditioning and societal stuff coming in. You can trust from a loving energy what is coming through. So real quick, I would like to put a container around those who want to call in. So I will be able to channel for their higher self or their guides. For anything that's mediumship oriented, that would be better done in a different session.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I just appreciate you being willing to have us open up the phone lines, because I think hearing that is a great experience as well, right? Is people want to experience this, hear it. And so we'll open the phone lines after we come back from our break. Again, that number to call for Om Times Radio is 1-202-570-7057. My producer Chris will put you in the waiting room until we can bring you on. Please let us know what your name is and where you're calling from. And then Stephanie and I will just continue with this interview. If we don't have any callers, call in, that's okay, because we have a lot to talk about when it comes to channeling and the history of channeling and I would say the healing aspect, right? I know I'm sure you feel the same way, Stephanie. When you are doing a session of channeling, whether it's for the higher self or, like you said, the difference of mediumship connecting to someone that lived a physical life, there's healing that takes place at so many different levels. For the medium, for the channeler, for the person that has sought us out, and for the spirit world and those that reside there, there's a healing triangle that takes place. And I believe it's very beautiful work. But yeah, again, I didn't anticipate doing this, let alone doing a radio show, and doing readings. But again, our experiences open us up to start searching and exploring and prospecting for those many mysteries of life, the mystical, the ancient wisdom of channeling and mediumship, and how to connect to our loved ones, whether it's your friends, your family members, or your fur babies. A lot of people want to connect to their animals. Sometimes I think more than humans at times. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to our first break. Again, if you want to call in, we'll open the phone lines in the second half when we come back. That number to call again for Ohm Times, 1-202-570-7057. You can also get that number off of any of our social media sites. So we're going to come back here in just 2 minutes. Our special guest today, Stephanie Banks, talking about what does your soul want to know and the ancient practice of channeling. We'll be right back here in just a few minutes. This is Inspired Living Radio.
The future of internet radio is here. Ohm Times Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Ohm Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Ohm Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Ohm Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
One planet, 7.3 billion people. Only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time
landing a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Inspired Living. Our special guest today, Stephanie Banks, who is a highly sought after intuitive channel mentor and guide who helps people connect on the soul level. And before we get back into the second half of the show, again, just a reminder to our listeners that the phone lines are open live. If you want to call in and have an experience of channeling with Stephanie, you can call in at 1-202-570 7057. You can also get that number off of our social media pages. I want to read a couple quotes. When I was doing this write-up, Stephanie, from your website, you talked about how, quote, we have all been heavily influenced by societal, familial, and cultural conditioning. Sometimes that conditioning runs so deep that we disconnect from our soul's purpose. And then you went on to say, how much more fun could you have if your spirit was your guiding force, end quote. So let's talk about that, because I think that's very impactful for today's very connected society, but also history teaches us that we're more connected more than ever now, but we're also more disconnected from one another than we ever have been in our technology. So talk to me a little bit about that conditioning and that disconnect from our soul's purpose.
Sure. Yeah, it's sort of like what I was alluding to before, in that when you're learning to channel, or learning any new skill, actually, you can apply this to, we have this tendency to immediately doubt ourselves and to discount what we're getting, and to really not believe that we are as spectacular, miraculous, and expansive as we are. And this is learned, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't have it. You think about different moments in your childhood where you were told what you could and could not do, what was and wasn't available to you, maybe even where your skills were or did not lie. And we've been getting these messages from the time we were very, very young, that have really shaped us as individuals, the choices and decisions that we've made, the paths that we have chosen to take. But if we were to strip all of that away, who we all are these beautiful divine beings, sparks of spirit, just glowing, activated spirit that is here to co-create and manifest amazing, amazing things, much of which we don't even know that we're here to do, because this gets revealed to us during our journeys. Just like Marc, you were saying, you had no idea that this type of work was in your future. I didn't know it either, but through a series of incredible events and amazing teachers and synchronicities and the like, here we are doing this, following the path. So a lot of what I feel our work is to do is to unlearn. This is the time of a great unlearning.
Yep.
And when we can create that opportunity to really question, not from self-doubt, but question, is this true about myself? Can I know this to be absolutely true? Or is this likely just what I've been told or shown repeatedly enough that I've come to believe it? Then things start to fall away. We can shed layers. We can open to something bigger than ourselves. And that's what I do believe all of us are craving, is to be in service to something that's bigger than us.
I love that. And you're exactly right. We have to, in this journey, we have to unlearn a lot of those things that we've been learned or programmed or taught to believe. And I still laugh to this day, we were talking about this, and I reflect back on, my sum is all of my experiences, right? And it led me down this path. But for you listeners out there too, this isn't going to be enforced upon you. This is a free will, and this is a choice that you choose to go down. And for the listeners out there, a lot of times my students ask, well, how do I know that I'm getting a message? How do I know it's not my imagination? And I always remind them that we're the only species that measures our life by time. So if you get something that drops into your mind, or you get those chills like you were talking about, Stephanie, the clairsentience, and you just know something to be true, there's no time for that message. It usually drops in, whether it's into your mind or on your skin. You don't have really time to think about it. If it's more than 2 to 3 seconds, then it's usually your imagination, or you're thinking about it. So I always tell people, if these messages start dropping in, it can come from different channels too. It can come through free writing, it can come through dreams, it can come through mirror gazing, water gazing, fire gazing. I've seen it all when it comes to channeling. But a lot of times it will usually pop in. I don't know if you've had this, Stephanie, where you're just driving, and all of a sudden, driving is a great meditation if you don't have the road rage and you're not in the heavy traffic. But if you're out driving in the countryside, I've had so many downloads where a message will just drop into my mind, and I'll be like, where did that come from? I didn't have time to imagine it or think about it. And so that's, for the listeners out there, they may ask, well, how do I know I'm getting messages? How do I know that I'm getting those signs or symbols? Well, you have to be aware of it, but you also have to choose and free will. And then the spirit world and those that reside there will start to work with you, but they'll never overstep your free will and your choice, because that's your greatest power while you're here in the incarnate physical form, is the power to choose and your free will to choose. So I just wanted to point that out to our listeners. So when we receive intuitive messages, again, this is kind of going back, I'm leading into the next question for you. How, from your perspective, because I believe spirituality is our ability to shift our perspectives, how do we know that we're not making them up? What's your definition for imagination versus an actual channeling message?
So this is interesting because I celebrate that we're making this up. We are making this up all the time. Everything that exists in your home, every object that you own was first imagined before it came into form. So I don't know why as a society we diminish the power and the spirit of the human imagination, because it is definitely something to be celebrated. And if I didn't have imagination, I would not be able to channel. This is my belief. We might differ on our opinions here. But the imagination is what allows me to have the connection. It allows me to see the imagery that I see. It allows me to have the understanding. That's the place from which I believe that I channel. So I do teach people to say, if your question is, well, what if I'm just making this up? Then jump up and down and pump your fists in the air and say, I am making this up, because it's true about our lives. It's true about our relationships. We are creating this. We are designing this. We are divining this all the time. And yeah, the imagination is a beautiful space from which that takes place.
Yeah, and I wanted to offer, I kind of teed that up because I wanted you to give us a different perspective, because you're right, imagination is very important. And some of the best historians, writers, scientists, I'm thinking of Einstein, where he talked about, I'm not enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, but imagination encircles the world, right? And so it's important to have that imagination. But when you're channeling, especially when it comes to mediumship, people want that validation. They want that evidence, right? But as Oscar Wilde teaches us, anyone who lives within their means suffers from a lack of imagination as well, right? So imagination, and you're right, is very important to have. I just was pointing out, because people ask us all the time, how do I know that it's not that I'm making this up, or is it a real communication? And belief is going to be a part of that as well. And sometimes when I'm working with somebody, I will let them know that some of the best evidence will come after the reading, because you've set an intention. You are now manifesting to connect to something bigger than yourself. And the spirit world and those that reside there are much more intelligent and loving than we are here on the physical plane. And they will give you those signs, those symbols, those synergies and synchronicities. So yes, imagination does play a big part of this journey when it's channeling. Even Mark Twain talked about, you can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. So this is bringing us back to moving into that stillness, moving into that dedication and devotion of connecting to something bigger than yourself. And a lot of reasons people don't experience this because they just don't make the time to do it, whether it's early in the morning, mid-afternoon, or before bed. But I always remind people, take the time to disconnect so you have the time to reconnect to yourself, to know thyself, but also to connect to things that are much bigger than us, because this is only temporary, right? What we see right now, this communication we're having right now, this is all temporary, right? Now it'll be recorded for, legacy down, somebody may listen to this, 50 years from now, but life is moving and life is temporary. And so imagination does play a big part in that as well. So thank you for that perspective, Stephanie. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love everything that you just said, and I will answer the question. To me, channeled messages feel joyful, and they feel meaningful, and they feel very deeply touching and moving. So if you're getting things coming through that resonate in that way with you, I think that's something I'd encourage people to lean into. If you are feeling fear, if you're feeling constriction, if you're feeling like pulling away, in my experience, those are not channeled messages. That is an interference of either your mind and your own fearful thoughts and beliefs, or your frequency's off. You need to attend to your energetic hygiene and bring yourself into a different vibrational frequency to be in the clarity of the messaging that comes through. But for me, the way I know that it's channeled from the fifth dimensional consciousness is based on how it feels around me and within.
Yeah, good point. I always say thank you, Hollywood, for your Hollywood movies, because I remember when I first started out, I had so many different labels of mediumship. The Sixth Sense had come out, and seeing people in all of their negative ways, and I don't find that to be true. I've actually found that to be quite opposite with channeling and mediumship. But I always say thank you, Hollywood, for the movies that you've brought into our cultural and into our mindsets. You could even go back to Jaws. I remember when I first saw Jaws, I was scared to go in the water, right? So that fear that you're talking about, and I agree with you that the channeling, the mediumship should never feel draining. It should never feel negative or fearful. It's very sacred work, I believe, and I believe it's very ancient work, and feeling into that is a big part of the development, right? Knowing how you feel. Am I feeling this way, or is something or someone or the experience making me feel this way, right? The price of sensitivity is the sensitivity of what we're trying to develop. And so, that's where the patient comes in, grace and trust and dedication, because it is trial and error as you learn to do this. For our listeners out there, you may have been doing this for a long time. You may be just starting. So with anything in life, we get through our education system, you go into college or vocation, you have to apply that. And it's no different in development of connecting to something bigger yourself. So give yourself time, trust, patience, and grace along the way. Be graceful with yourself. So again, the phone lines are open. If you want to call in, the number to call is 1-202-570-7057 if you want to talk with Stephanie and get an experience of the channeling. We only have about 15 minutes left, so if you want to call, this would be the time to do it. And while we're waiting for any callers to call in, Stephanie, I was going to say, what do you love most? What is the most, in your experience, what is the most challenging about your work as a channel?
Okay, so what do I love most, or what's the most challenging, or both?
Let's do both. Yeah, I think what do you love most in the experiences, and what do you find most challenging working with the incarnate in the physical world?
Okay, so what I love the most are actually the people that I have had, or I should say the souls that I've had an opportunity to meet and to work with. There's such an honor. It is such an honor to me to be asked to peer into family dynamics, relationship dynamics, inter or intrapersonal dynamics, and understand from the deeper soul perspective, and be able to bring that into some clarity and focus for those that I'm channeling for. And what I also love is channeling animals. That's also a great joy. You mentioned earlier that some people love that a lot more than dealing with the human variety, and I probably should count myself among them, because the animals being such a pure positive energy, and I include nature in that as well, because I do channel trees, and trees have a lot to say to us and a lot of things to teach us.
Yes, they do.
It's just a beautiful thing to be alive on this gorgeous planet with all of the life that is teeming around. And what's most challenging, I think, just for me, is more like a personality trait, because I can tend towards type A. And so I have, fears just like anyone else does about getting it right, saying the perfect thing, presenting myself in a way that I feel reflects close enough to what I'm feeling and sensing from spirit, because it's just such a enormous light that comes through a spirit that words cannot reflect that adequately. But yet it's what we have. So finding the words in the language, I find can be somewhat challenging sometimes. It sometimes feels like it's scratching the surface, but there's so much more that's there.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. And you're right. When I was developing years ago, I would move into that fear, right? And I always remind the listeners and my students that fear, when you move into that fear based on your learned behavior, recognize that energy of fear and remind yourself that fear is false evidence appearing real. And I always like to switch it to be face everything and rise, right? Like, it's okay to have that fear, work through it, but acknowledge it, become aware to that, because it's going to help you find your authentic self, and it's going to help you become a more authentic, connected channeler or medium or psychic or healer or whatever the work that you're following. And again, don't be afraid to fail. Fail, in our society, I remind people that we're here to learn. Life is a university, and failure should happen every single day of our lives. And that's first attempt in learning. So address the fear, acknowledge it, move through it, and be okay to fail, because you're learning just like everything in life. And through that process, that's how I find my authentic ability to communicate as a medium. And I'm sure you feel the same way as a channeler, that you can you experience those failure moments, or those thoughts, or the ego, or that fear of, what if I don't get this right, or what if this person is not happy with my message? You got to put that all behind you and just move into that authentic connection of channeling. And you talked about the natural world. Let's talk about that real quick. How is the natural world a resource of our energetic health, our well-being, and our connection to something bigger than ourselves?
Well, it's really everything, actually, because everything we need to sustain life, we take from the natural world. And of course, there's great suffering going on in the natural world right now due to human behavior and greed and et cetera. So we're really being asked by Mother Nature, Mother Earth herself, to rise in service to what is going to be a total change in the way humans have been using the planet or exploiting resources, and moving from the individual perspective of what's for me or mine, and into the collective of the fact that the truth that if one of us is not free, none of us are free. And if one of us is suffering, all are suffering. And if there's not enough food or resources for some, then we all need to be in response to that. So that's the seriousness with which I take my devotion to channeling the planet, and what messages tend to come through. But the tree beings, the plants, the insects, all of the life around us, they are messengers for us. I mean, we all have animal messengers. So if you're awake and you're paying attention and you go outside with some regularity, you will see animals will come to you. They will cross your path. They will be in front of you on the sidewalk that you're stepping on. So look that up. They all have different meanings and significance, and that can be really fun. There's entire websites dedicated to animal totems and what they mean. And then sometimes many of us are drawn to certain particular animals. Like, I am passionate about elephants. I don't exactly know why, but my goodness, they just, I could weep when I think about elephants. So getting more connected to what draws you, what speaks to your heart, and finding a way to be in service and in loving service to that is really important. And, nature has a way of clearing and cleansing us. So in between sessions, what I like to do is go out to my garden, and anything I might have absorbed, anything that might have kind of stuck around my energy field, nature will just drain that for me. She will swoop that off with the breeze that comes by. I can go hug a tree. I can do some grounding and earthing, and send that energy through the soles of my feet, and then draw up just the most beautiful, nourishing energy, because that's what nature is.
Yeah, I agree with you. Nature's our greatest healer, our greatest engineer, our greatest teacher. And it's funny you said totem animal, because when I first started down this journey, real quick, I had an experience where I came face to face with a mountain lion up above Calistoga, California. Just wine tasting, didn't anticipate coming face to face with a mountain lion. She was beautiful, but we talked about fear, and I was like, there's a lot of fear, because she turned towards me, and we had to stop, because she was actually hunting a baby fawn. So I saw the fawn come in off the deck. I'm like, oh, there's a baby fawn, that looks beautiful. And then I thought the mom was coming, and nope, it was a mountain lion. And then she turned and faced me, and we had about a 20-second stare off. Now, what's interesting about that is I did exactly what you said. I went and looked that up. Okay, what does it mean when you have a face-to-face encounter with a 200-pound mountain lion? And the website that I actually went to, it led me to Dr. Stephen Farmer, who wrote the book Animal Spirit Guide. You can get that book online. And then wouldn't you know it, 6 years later, he was actually on Inspired Living and sent me his newest deck for children based on totem animal spirits. And so you just never know where the day is going to bring you, right? So, nature is just such an amazing connection and resource for your spiritual healing, your transformation, and your development. And I was also going to say, Stephanie, love. There's nothing in your world or mine that can part those whom love has united. The love that your mom has for you, the love you have for your mom. And I always say, love like life is stronger than death. Love like life is of the spirit, and the spirit can never be destroyed. And so if it can't be destroyed, that means that they're somehow connecting with us. If it can't be destroyed, then that means that they're around us and only ever thought away. And it's about how can we communicate, how can we channel with them on a daily basis, because there is wisdom and guidance that you talked about. So how can we overcome communication challenges by connecting on the soul level? What does our soul want to know, and how do we overcome these challenges of everyday life?
Well, I like to teach people how to first connect with their own soul, their higher self, because I feel like that's an area that we do tend to distract ourselves away from. It can feel daunting. And again, we can fear that what if we get the wrong message and we head down the wrong path? But your soul won't ever, ever guide you down the wrong path. Even if you feel like it's not really what you want, there's something in where you're being guided that is intended for your growth and your expansion and your understanding of yourself. So some key ways to tune into your higher self is to first release energy. And this is best done through activity and exercise, because in any given day, we bottle up a lot of stuff, and we do tend to hold a lot of tension and anxious energy and fear in our bodies. So some simple practices like to shake, literally just shake your body. I put on some African drum beats and I just stomp about, shake my body, release, get my heart rate up, and let a lot of stuff just move out. When your body's more settled and you release that energy, then you are already a more available vessel for what your soul or spirit wants to communicate to you. So then get yourself to a quiet and protected space where you're not going to be disrupted or interrupted. Don't have your devices nearby. There shouldn't be anything that's going to ring or ping or ding and disturb you. Some people like to light a candle. Some people like to have a little bit of an altar, which I do think is helpful. Whatever you do to create sacred space, bring in some crystals, some leaves, some feathers, some whatever is meaningful, photographs to you, and just have a sacred space that you go to, and then drop into whatever type of meditative state works for you. And this might take a while for you to find what works for you. I'm constantly figuring it out. I'm not the world's best meditator. It doesn't mean you can't channel, though. You don't have to be a great meditator in order to channel. You just have to show up to the practice of meditating in order to become a better channel. And I'm a big fan of automatic writing. You can write down your question, and you can take a few breaths, center yourself, and allow your pen to be guided over the paper. Invoke your higher self. Say, may I please have guidance from my own soul as it relates to this question? I am open to receiving. And just allow that flow. Some people can do like a voice recording. They can ask their question out loud and then take a few breaths and speak whatever comes through. The idea is, do not play the editor here. Let the flow occur. Whether it's grammatically correct, whether it makes sense, whether you understand all of that is irrelevant. Just allow the flow to be. And as you continue with the practice, you will get more and more honed in, and it will make more sense to you.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for sharing those diamonds, that wisdom. Just show up. Don't be the editor, right? Just show up. Don't be the editor of the information that's flowing. Again, Stephanie, thanks for being our guest today. Thank you for the work that you're doing, the vibration that you're setting out into our world. We always talk about how we need more, teachers and healers and spiritual, guides to help us in this world. And so I just want to thank you for what you're doing out there. Look forward to your next book, your TEDx talks that you're doing. Just keep going, because I know that your mom is right there with you, and very proud of the work that you're doing and the lives that you are touching. Again, if you want to work with Stephanie, you can get all of the links off of our social media sites over at Om Times, or you can go to soulinsight.com. And it's just been a real pleasure talking with you today, Stephanie. So thank you so much for sharing your beautiful light with my listeners in the world today.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I'm so grateful you're doing your soul's work in the world as well.
Oh, thank you, my friend. And as we get ready to close, just a reminder, right, I wanted to close this show out with going back to the imagination that Stephanie was talking about. And imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions. And that's from the very knowledgeable Albert Einstein. So get into that preview of life's coming attractions, because life is always going to bring attractions, and life is always going to bring us change. And I just want to say thank you to our listeners for being here today with us. You can always catch encore shows throughout the week, and you can always catch the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, including this show with our amazing guest today, Stephanie Banks, a highly sought after intuitive channel, mentor, and guide who helps people connect on the soul level. So connect with her if you want to know what your soul wants to know. This is Inspired Living. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day, week, month, year, and we'll see you next time here on Inspired Living. Until our next soul adventure together, be kind, caring, and compassionate. Most importantly, wherever you're at, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover the diamond within.